pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who was also on the program this morning, Mr. Bob Priddy, who is the president of the Missouri Historical Society, and he will be presenting this afternoon on the new Center for Missouri Studies and also on the plans for the bicentennial, for Missouri's bicentennial in 2021.
Okay, for those of you who are interested, there's a minute and 4 seconds left in the second quarter, and Georgia's up 20-7. They haven't exactly been running away with it. They scored a touchdown on a blocked punt and an 8-yard return for a touchdown. They scored a field goal on a fumble recovery of 68 yards, and then they had to settle for a field goal. So it's not like they're exactly running over the Missouri Tigers. I haven't checked on what's going on with Southeast Missouri State or anything like that. But that's an update for any Tiger fans that are around. We're going to be passing out, are we passing them out or are we passing some material from the State Historical Society. I see they're going to start passing it out, and I hope you'll take a look at it before we're done. I don't want to wear out my welcome by standing here a second time talking to you, but the State Historical Society is a pretty important thing. Nancy and I are going to be leaving shortly because Nancy has church obligations tomorrow, and I have to do a Capitol tour with some crew members from the USS Missouri tomorrow. The USS Missouri now is a submarine. They don't do battleships anymore, so our new ship is a submarine, which is you can't believe how big these submarines are these days. But the Missouri is the first. That class of boats that is the Missouri is the first submarine in American history where every person on the submarine will have his or her own bunk.
Wow.
So that's how big these things are. And I've been on Jefferson City, which is pretty big, and just to be aboard a submarine like that is just amazing stuff. Before I talk about the society and the bicentennial, I want to embarrass Bob a little bit. I want you to know how much the State Historical Society appreciates Bob Miller. 3 years ago, we gave him our highest award, Distinguished Service Award. And this award is so important that a certificate's not enough. There's a medal that goes with it, too. We got a certificate and a medal, and we appreciate everything he's been to us. He does a lot of work with our long-range planning, and I've been to a couple of long-range planning committees with the staff, and they're doing some wonderful things. So, and I don't need to spend a whole lot of time talking to people in St. Genevieve about what a great guy he is and what great people he and Linda are. So I just wanted you to know the State Historical Society has tremendous appreciation for this person and these people. Some remarkable things are happening at the State Historical Society, and I want to share with you some of those things. Now, I want to draw a distinction between the State Historical Society of Missouri and the Missouri Historical Society. We are often confused. Sometimes to the State Historical Society's disadvantage, especially in handling some estates. A few months ago, we got a check from a St. Louis woman's estate for a sizable amount made out to the State Historical Society of Missouri. A woman we've never heard of, we've never been a member, as far as we know, had never been in our facility. But since she was from St. Louis, and because of some of the wording in the attorney's letter, we thought, oh, this should have been made out to the Missouri Historical Society instead of the State Historical Society of Missouri. So sure enough, we called St. Louis. We talked to Fran and her people at the Missouri Historical Society, and they knew who this woman was, unfortunately. And so we sent them our check. There hasn't been anybody that I know of who's died who's left anything to them in that quantity, or they sent the check to us. But that's the kind of confusion that goes on. There's two different organizations. The Missouri Historical Society is a private group in St. Louis. Their headquarters are in Forest Park. They have this great museum, and they're doing a lot of work, but they're focused on mostly St. Louis history, especially the World's Fair of 1904 at Lindbergh and St. Louis generally. But their focus is, they're privately funded, and they're focused on St. Louis. The State Historical Society of Missouri is headquartered in Columbia. We have 5 regional offices. The closest one is Cape Girardeau, or St. Louis. I guess Cape Girardeau would be a little bit closer. The State Historical Society of Missouri was founded by the Missouri Press Association. Significantly, the Missouri Press Association created the State Historical Society during their convention, which was held in Arkansas. which is not particularly unusual given the contrary nature of Missouri and Missourians. You know, this is a state that has a state flower that's a tree, and a state tree that's a bush. And a state song that means almost nothing about Missouri. So it is not surprising that the State Historical Society of Missouri was actually founded in Arkansas. But the Press Association founded it primarily as a way to save these huge piles of old newspapers that have been accumulating for decades. And that is why we have so many old newspapers that tell us of our history way back to before we were even a state. We were decreed by the legislature as an official trustee of the state, which is why most of our budget every year comes from the state of Missouri. We also get money from memberships and from donations, and I think we have here a brochure about the Historical Society, and if you look inside somewhere, maybe outside, you'll see a membership application. And I hope that all of you will want to join the State Historical Society and be thinking of us. We appreciate your membership because we can do a lot of things with a lot of members. We have now been designated as the lead organization to celebrate Missouri's 200th anniversary as a state. On August the 10th, 2021, we'll celebrate the 200th anniversary of the President signing the proclamation making Missouri a state. It was a painful process, as some of you are familiar. We wrote the Constitution for the state of Missouri. Congress took a look at it and said, no, you can't have one of these provisions in here. You can't be admitted to the Union until you take out that provision that says no free Negroes are allowed in Missouri. And the Missouri legislature refused to do it, and finally passed a law saying, well, we just won't enforce that, and Congress decided, oh, that's good enough. And that's when we came into the state, into the Union, and Maine came into the state to try to keep this futile effort alive to balance free states and slave states. So August the 10th, 2021 will be the 200th anniversary of our admission to the Union. And the State Historical Society is the lead organization that is putting together the bicentennial observances. We have formed an alliance with a number of other organizations to help reach out to as many communities and organizations and individuals as possible to celebrate our 200th birthday. We've started a bicentennial penny drive, for example, in our schools earlier this year to raise money that will help us preserve many of the founding documents of our state. Some of our partners are creating lesson plans for schools to teach about Missouri's bicentennial and Missouri's struggle for statehood. The unfortunate thing is a lot of our teaching of students in our schools is done at the 3rd grade level. And by the time these students are ready to vote 10 years later, it's been 10 years since they really got any kind of intensive study of Missouri history or Missouri politics. But nonetheless, we're still trying to find programs that can reach them not only at 3rd grade level, but throughout their education. And we're helping to work with other partners to create lesson plans that will help better educate students about our state. There's a traveling exhibit that is being developed to explain our 3-year struggle for statehood. We're creating a new online Missouri encyclopedia, and we're soliciting ideas from people who have topics that they think should be covered as far as people or events or things like that. And if you would have some suggestions, please get in touch with us through our shsmo.org webpage. There's a special webpage for the Encyclopedia of Missouri, and you can go to that and you can, I think, probably contact us and make some suggestions if there are some famous people or some famous events or other things going on that you think should be part of this. And since it's online, rather than between hard covers, there's really no limit to how much we can include in this. We can put out, we can have the equivalent of about a whole shelf of Goodspeed's histories, if you will, from the 1880s on the webpage, and they'll all be searchable and people can go find a lot of things that way. So if you have some ideas, go to the webpage, take a look at that at shsmo.org, and then make some suggestions. We'd be glad to hear from you. We're encouraging our communities and our schools and our local groups to document local traditions and the creative expressions, and get that material to us too, whether it's photographs or recordings or whatever. We'd like to have that. We're creating a special Missouri 2021 photograph contest that will document the diversity of life in our state. We're going to be getting a lot of pictures, we hope, and then we're going to take the final 200 pictures and use them as digital exhibitions about Missouri and the 2021 website. And then we'll also be setting up some physical displays in our Center for Missouri Studies. Probably we'll be able to move those around to various other places too. But if you want to come to the new Missouri Center for Studies, this new Center for Missouri Studies, you can see that in 2021. And I'll talk about our new building in just a minute. We're also endorsing local projects with bicentennial themes. And each year, the State Historical Society will be taking applications from communities throughout the state on projects they have that have a bicentennial theme to them. And they can be not just a one-year thing, but they can be an extensive thing that's going on for several years. But every year, we will pick 5 local communities, and we'll give each of them $500 to help work on those projects. Now, for some historical societies, $500 is really a lot of money. For some others, it's not quite so much, but $500 will help do a lot of work on preserving our history. We have a link to the Missouri 2021 webpage on our webpage. So again, shsmo.org, and you can then click on any of these things that have to do with the bicentennial or anything else, including digital newspapers that we're working on to make digital copies of our newspaper archives. We're soliciting money to continue that project. We're also soliciting money for continuing our microfilming. Our microfilm supplier doubled the price of microfilm in ours this year.
Wow.
So I could stand here all day and beg for money because of the projects we're doing and the increased costs for them, including the microfilm. You now have some materials that talk about our new Center for Missouri Studies. Abraham Lincoln on December the 1st, 1862 was speaking to Congress talking about the Civil War and emancipation and various other issues, including freedom for the slaves. And I like this part of one of his speeches, a lot of his speeches. I grew up in Illinois, so I'm a Lincolnian, I guess. But this is a particularly important speech from our standpoint. And some might find some value in what he said in 1862 to contemporary times, but sometimes I think we have to be careful in how we apply the words of the past to conditions of today. He was speaking at that time, as I said, of the Civil War, emancipation, and other things, when he said, "The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. In our case, as our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. We must disenthrall ourselves, and then we shall save our country. Fellow citizens, we cannot escape history. We of this Congress and this administration will be remembered in spite of ourselves. No personal significance or insignificance can spare one or another of us. The fiery trial through which we pass will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation." So we have a responsibility as individuals and as cities and counties and congresses to history. We cannot escape history. That's what Abraham Lincoln said. And we are constructing something in Columbia that boldly turns Abraham Lincoln's words into architecture. The contractors tell us the new Center for Missouri Studies will be open next spring. It'll be available to us next spring. It'll be finished by then. It won't be open, though, until a few months later. Now, for more than a century, your State Historical Society has occupied an obscure basement corner of the library at the University of Missouri in Columbia, the main library. There's an obscure entrance hidden behind a tree most of the time, although that tree now has been cut down. There's a dark hallway. There's a small art gallery. There's a windowless reading room. We call it a research center, but it's a reading room. And it's the place we have now is everything that confirm what a lot of people think about history. It's just a place where you stuff old, dull, dusty things on shelves. Well, young people think that. It's not until you get a little age on us like we have that you begin to appreciate how wrong that thinking really is. But we're moving from quarters that actually support that kind of thinking into this incredible new structure, the Center for Missouri Studies. You have a drawing of it here. And yes, anyway, we have a drawing of that for you. It's difficult. You look at the drawings, and it's difficult to really appreciate what you're going to see in Columbia when you come to Columbia and see this building when it's completed. In fact, I was standing on a street corner Thursday, looking catty-corner across the street at this new building, which now is pretty well enclosed. It's not all girders and concrete. You can actually see the shape of it, and it is incredible. It's just amazing.
Where in Columbia is it?
In Columbia, it is at the corner of 6th and Elm. If you know where Peace Park is on the north edge of the Columbia campus, it's right across the street from Peace Park. You know, all politics is local, as Tip O'Neill said many years ago, the Speaker of the House, then all history is personal. And if you come into our present structure, and especially if you come into our new building, you'll find more and more ways that you can really understand why history is personal. Whether you're looking up something about crazy Uncle Claude or Mad Aunt Mary, you're able to find stuff about the history and the events that has shaped your life today and your ancestors' lives in the past. And you can probably even find your crazy aunt and uncle in the newspapers that we have. But we realize that we have lived through history all of our lives. And we realize that our parents and grandparents shaped the history that shaped our lives too. And so all of this is going to be in that new building in a new and dramatic way. History lives at the State Historical Society, and it's going to get a new home that is going to call incredible attention to its importance. I know from experience, having spent hours and hours going through files and boxes and letters and old newspapers, as I might have indicated this morning in my presentation, that ghosts live in those boxes, folks. And sometimes they speak to you. Sometimes you can hear them, and they are there waiting for you to discover. Our new building is going to provide even greater opportunities for those discoveries, finding those voices, and listening to what they have to say to us. More of our collection is going to be accessible to more people on site in this new building than we can possibly make available in the present structure. Our manuscript collection that is in the present Historical Society offices and stored in other places in Columbia totals 17,000 cubic feet. It's a lot of paper. How much paper is that? Well, if you took about 17,000 cubic feet of paper and you took each sheet of paper and you stood it on end and then started stacking other paper along it, that 17,000 cubic feet of paper would cover 6 football fields. And then if you take all of the archives we have in our regional centers, in Cape Girardeau and Rolla and Springfield and Kansas City and St. Louis, and added that, there would be enough paper standing on edge to cover 10 football fields. That's how much we have. And we're going to have to move all of that, or at least the 10 football fields worth. We're going to have to move all of that about 4 blocks into our new building sometime next spring. That's why we're going to close our resource center in Columbia for about 3 months, so that we'll have time to move this stuff into the new building. It's just not something we can throw into the back end of our staff minivan and drive down the street, especially the 20,000 pieces of art that we have. 20,000 pieces of art valued at something beyond $100 million. That's the kind of an art collection you have to be pretty careful, even when you're just moving it a few blocks. This building is going to give us a 5,400 square foot art gallery, so we'll be able to display more of that artwork, including the nation's only complete collection of George Caleb Bingham lithographs and engravings that were printed during his lifetime. It is the only complete public collection of all of Thomas Hart Benton's edition lithographs, Our collection also includes one of the nation's largest collections of Bentley's work on paper and his incredible World War II paintings that he did. It's the only complete collection of those. Now, more local interest. We have a complete set of the octavo collection of John James Audubon, all 6 volumes of his birds and animals, plus 11 birds and about a dozen mammals in the even larger formats of his publications. So this new Center for Missouri Studies is far more than just a building. It is a statement that will shout, we cannot escape history. It'll say history is dynamic, history is alive, history is valuable, and you are part of it. Come inside and be a greater part. We'll be moving rolls of microfilm that contain more than 50 million pages of newspapers dating back to 1808, the first newspaper in Missouri published in St. Louis. And in fact, we have about 15 newspapers that have been published in St. Genevieve County. It is in the St. Genevieve County newspapers the other day that I found the words of Congressman John Noel, who represented this area, and he wrote, in January of 1861, I do not concur in the doctrine of peaceable secession, as it is called, that I do not believe that the Constitution of the United States recognizes the right of individuals or states to destroy it at pleasure with or without cause. Yet it is now too late to argue that question. Revolution, with its black tempestuousness, countenance, and bloody hands, stands before us. The St. Genevieve Plain Dealer told us when the Missouri House of Representatives met in a special session in February of 1860, the forenoon was consumed in cussing and discussing the question of whether they should go into general legislation or confine themselves to the subjects considered in the proclamation. A motion was made that the whole matter be laid on the table, which was rejected, after which they went to lunch. The St. Genevieve Weekly Review in 1946, July, carried news that Congress had passed a law providing for the removal of soldiers killed in action from their burial places in foreign countries to their hometowns, but, said the article, due to the steel shortage which prevents the delivery of caskets until sometime late in the fall, it will be impossible to start repatriation efforts at this time. The Herald reported, the St. Genevieve Herald reported in 1913 that the Portland cement industry was still in its infancy, but even then Missouri was 5th in the country in production of cement. And we learned it was big news in 1930 when the yacht called the North Star, carrying Dr. and Mrs. William Mayo, he was the surgeon who founded the Mayo Clinic, sailed past St. Genevieve on its way to New Orleans. That made it in the newspaper. For the joy of reading through old newspapers at the Center for Missouri Studies in Columbia is finding things like those, or maybe even stories about personal milestones that you recall, or personal events that shaped your family's history. And all of that is going to be more available in more ways than ever in the new Center for Missouri Studies. So I hope you'll join us about a year from now for the first annual meeting of the State Historical Society of Missouri in the Center for Missouri Studies, the brand new building. In fact, I hope you'll join us in a few weeks in Columbia for our annual fall lecture and our annual meeting. Our speaker is going to be Caroline Fraser, who won the Pulitzer Prize last year for her book, Prairie Fires, The American Dream of Laura Ingalls Wilder. I think we've all probably read Laura Ingalls Wilder or had the books read to us. It's a wonderful book that puts Laura in her place in history, in historical context, and talks about how the events and circumstances as she was growing up shaped the way she told stories in her book. So if you'd like to join us, again, go to our website at shsmo.org, and there's registration information, and come to Columbia. We're only about 2.5 hours away, even on a crooked road. So come and visit us and enjoy that day and meet Caroline Fraser and have her talk about this book. And then while you're there, I hope you will drive by 6th and Elm on the edge of the campus, the north edge of the campus at Peace Park, and look at this magnificent new center, which is going up right now. When we broke ground on that, I'd seen all the drawings, the pictures that you have, I'd seen all of that, but I was sitting in my chair in that parking lot where this building was going up, and I started looking around at how large that parking lot was, and it was only then that I was stunned by how much greater we will have a facility in Columbia for Missouri history. Yeah, a couple final ones. We might be 2.5 or so hours away from you here in St. Genevieve, but we're not really that far away. We do have our regional resource centers in Cape and in St. Louis, and we have courier services that can bring things to those resource centers from our offices in Columbia. So if there's microfilm or documents or something you want to look at, we can bring them to your closest resource center. So you don't have to go to Columbia if you don't want to, but we can provide that for you to look at. This does not include our major works of art, of course. But any of the documents and pictures and stuff like that we have, we'll be glad to send them over so that you can go to your resource center and visit them. But I hope you come to see us and see our new building. And I can't leave without mentioning one final thing about our new building. And what will amount to, in many ways, a refounding of the State Historical Society of Missouri. One of the things we hope to do with this new building is to build an endowment that will enable us to do so many more new things in this new building. And also to protect us if our appropriations take a nosedive when the economy takes a nosedive. So I want to see our endowment built so that we can withstand that kind of thing. Our goal is $20 million to start with. And one reason I want to see this happen is because I have a tremendous appreciation for the staff people who work with people like you and me, who call upon the Historical Society. In 2008, remember when the economy tanked, our appropriation was severely cut by the state of Missouri, and we were contemplating laying off 25% of our staff. And our staff came to Gary Kramer, our executive director, and said, we will take pay cuts, deep pay cuts if necessary, to avoid losing the people who work here, our friends and compatriots and the other folks who serve the Historical Society. And they did. And we didn't have to lay off anything. I want to keep faith with people like that. And one way I can keep faith with people like that is trying to help raise this endowment so that when the economy goes south and our appropriation is cut again, we have the resources to reach in and continue to operate full staff at the level we are. And so we don't have to have our people volunteer to do what our wonderful people did in 2008. So that's one reason I would like to see us get this $20 million endowment going. So if you have friends who would be capable of helping us out, please put them in touch with us or put us in touch with them, because this is such a valuable service, a valuable institution to the whole state of Missouri. Some people might think that they can only make a little drop in the bucket contribution. And I say that's fine, because anybody who's ever had a leaky roof knows that if you put a bucket out there, sooner or later, those little drops are going to fill that bucket. So we'll take a drop. And we'll take the whole bucket if we can get it too. But I hope that you will support the State Historical Society of Missouri and be excited about our new capabilities. And take a look at the material that's been passed out. If you're not a member, please join us. We cannot ignore that, but we do so at our own peril if we try to. But Lincoln was correct 156 years ago. We cannot escape history. And that's why the State Historical Society of Missouri exists. That's why I hope you'll help us accomplish our mission. It's been great being in St. Genevieve and great being with the Millers, and I appreciate this town so much. And the presentation about the National Park Service program is so exciting. I'm looking forward to coming back and seeing St. Genevieve quite often and watching the progress happen. So good luck with all of that, and come to Columbia and visit us sometime. Thank you.